Hello, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 3 of the Grand Plans Podcast. My name is Susanna Barton. I am the founder of the Grand Plans online community and podcast. And today we are into our third session of the Grand Plans workshop. So things are a little different this season. We are recording the conversations that we've been having in these workshops, which have been very successful and fun. Today we are talking about steps 9, 10, 11, and 12 of a grand plan. So look forward to having you listen in today. Thanks for joining us. All right, we're back at the Literary Lounge, episode 3 of season 3. And we are going to start today talking about steps 9, 10, 11, and 12. And the first topic is about relinquishing the keys and to be ready to be a passenger when it's our time. So, as we've been doing it in the other two classes, the format's going to be to talk about the issue, why it's a problem, and then share some good solutions or experiences that have turned that around for y'all in your experience. So, the keys, yes. It's a tough one because no one wants to be told that they can't drive, and when someone quote unquote gives up the keys, that means or feels like a loss of independence, and it's scary. I mean, for anybody. I always say I can't wait until I can't drive because I'm ready to be a passenger. But when you really think about it, that's hard. So yeah.
Oh, that's right. You were a passenger for a long time.
Yeah, not fun. So anyway, I think the problem is pretty obvious. It is if an older loved one is allowed to drive or is driving past their ability, either cognitively, physically, or otherwise, it can harm people. I mean, there's accidents that can happen, and not naming any names, but we had a family member who was pretty insistent on driving, and there was an accident and she wasn't even sure that what had happened or why that was a problem. So anyway, have y'all had any similar experiences? And I'm going to pass the mic around the table. And when you have something to say, just grab the mic down there or here.
My experience made chapter 9. Yes, I am the white Buick LaCrosse with Florida tags. And it was not a great time for this to happen. I was out of state. Luckily, I had a place to stay there. And I had a friend who was spending the weekend and could take me to the airport to fly back to Jacksonville. But this little old lady hit the gas instead of the brakes in a huge, well, not huge, but a large SUV, and smashed into my car, and not just halfway, all the way out of the...
Oh, my God. There's a good visual here.
Yes, all the way out of the parking spot. So she she hit that gas hard, and her son arrived, soon after I was notified of the debacle, and he was horrified. And, I've been trying to take her keys, and I haven't been able to. And I just told him, this is your time. You have a reason to take them now. It was a car and not a person or a child that, was injured or killed. It was just a car. Which surprisingly was not totaled. It should have been, but it wasn't. But I had a little bit more grace in my heart because I had been going through the same thing with my mom the year before when she had dementia. And she had let her insurance lapse. She was not and her driver's license as well. And she pulled out of her cul-de-sac one day with me in the passenger seat, crossed over the first part of the boulevard to turn left, and about got broadsided on my side by a large truck. And I said to her, Mom, did you see the car coming? Well, no. I said, did you even look? And she said, no, it's hard for me to turn my head. And so as my life was flying before my eyes, it was, the keys were taken soon after that, but not before she had caved in the side of her very large Lincoln I can't remember which flavor Lincoln, but a very large Lincoln on the chain link fence at her church parking lot. And as I said, insurance had lapsed, so they couldn't use insurance to fix the car. It was just a nightmare. Don't plan on doing this to my children at all.
And actually, my story is with my mother-in-law, who was in suburbia. They lived in suburbia, Tennessee, and did $12,000 worth of damage when she drove into a ditch in her Cadillac. Now, she says she was changing radio stations, and then my husband looked at me and cocked his head and said, she doesn't listen to the radio in the car. And I think a really common myth is like the doctor will say it's time, or your doctor will take your license from you, or the state will per se. But really, it's state by state, because I ended up researching it for Tennessee because my concern, she lived in suburbia. There were moms with minivans on these roads, and granted, she, like Madeline's mother, she had done damage, but she could have taken out a minivan with 3 kids in the back seat very easily. And that, when I brought it up with the family, they were all like, well, the doctor will do it. And, when I looked at the law, doctor really doesn't have latitude. So I think being familiar with the state laws, since it's a state standard, it's not a federal standard, and starting having those conversations. But I also think we're in a better position than even our parents' generation 15 years ago, because Uber and Lyft are very predominant. And I think it also behooves us to get comfortable with using those as needed. So when we might become reliant on them, then we know how to use the app, and we know that it's not a serial killer coming to chop us up and put us in a stew. And also I have a friend who, when they downsized and moved to a condo, one of the criteria they were looking at was like walking distance to a grocery store, walking distance to some restaurants, and some other retail things. So one, it gave them a way to get items without having to get in the car if need be. And secondly, if they did choose to walk, that was just a little bit more bonus exercise.
Yes, and I think that is a great point to bring up, and when we're talking about solutions, is that we can factor that thinking into our choices and where we're going to live. And I think we all live in places where, fortunately, we are close to retail centers or commercial areas where we can have services. But it's something to think about, something to put on the list.
Well, I have a couple of stories. My grandfather, before he passed away at the age of 94, I believe it was. And he drove up until, I've forgotten, maybe 90, 92. And we were trying to get his license away from him, and he ended up having an accident. Thankfully, very close to home. He was pulling into the dry cleaners on Blanding Boulevard, and he pulled in the path of another car that hit him. It was a truck, actually, but they weren't going fast, and he wasn't injured. They took him to be checked out, but he was fine. But it totaled his car.
Oh gosh!
And everybody came out of it unscathed, and that was it. So we were like, yay, this was a blessing.
Right.
You know, it was a scary blessing.
Scary,
you know, to know
yes.
that he was in an accident, but nobody was hurt. And then he didn't fight us about it. He just, okay, that was it.
Right.
My parents, who are now late 80s, dad just turned 89, mom's 88. My dad is still driving, and I have ridden with him, and he drives well, which is good because once he stops driving, he drives and does everything for the two of them. So it's going to change my life considerably if he stops driving. My mom sort of phased out her own driving, which was really nice because I think, well, she started having some issues with her vision. And I think it was like, I think she says, well, I need to have cataract surgery. And so at first it was, I haven't driven in a while because I can't see well. And so until I have the cataract surgery, I'm just not going to drive. But then it was, oh, do I renew my license? Her license was up for renewal, and she was going to have to go in and do a test or something. And she said, I don't know if she was more concerned about not having an ID.
Oh.
And I
yeah.
said, Mom, your expired license is an ID. It's good for your purposes. I said, you're not planning on driving again, because she really just was like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to drive. No. And it's been too long now. She couldn't do it if she tried.
Right.
So I was very fortunate there that we didn't have to worry about her. So and since my dad does everything for him, she just gave it up easily.
Does she depend on any Lyft services or ride
No,
share?
him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when he was hospitalized for a couple of weeks, about, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago, that was challenging because then I had to do everything for her. And I wasn't driving at that point because I was in my boot. So I was having to rely on my husband to take me over to do things for them.
Right.
And then when he got out of the hospital and was home for about a week or so, he still wasn't driving. I stayed with him for the first week that he was home and still was relying on Madeline and my husband to drive. And then my dad got him, so he was determined to get back into, and he's fine now. So he recovered and is back driving. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, he goes out and gets whatever they're in the mood for. But they're very dependent on him being able to go do those things.
Yeah.
And
Well.
hello.
Hi.
All
All right.
Another comment about driving.
Driving. So yes. Any solutions to the
Well, I'm just
challenges?
wondering one thing I was going to mention. So I just got my parents. This is slightly changing the subject. I got the new jitterbug telephones.
Oh yes.
So one of the
Technology.
things that they have, we have not gotten. We just got them and we got them set up. We've gotten the basic service. But if you buy the next level up service, they have Lyft, and they will do. Yeah, wait. Basically, you don't have to install the app. You just call the number. You just dial the little button on the phone, and they will call a Lyft for you and set it all up. Which now we don't have that yet, but I'm thinking, because I don't want to get that level of service. They don't use their cell phones that much.
Right.
But when they're ready,
Yeah.
that would be a really cool way of doing it. Now the only thing is, we use Lyft a lot at the clinic where I work. We provide transportation for our patients. We have both a Lyft and an Uber account. We have a Lyft account that's done through the United Way that we have to schedule 2 days in advance, so because it's free. Then we have paid accounts, and I know from experience there are times when neither one of them will have a driver. So you call. Sometimes you get them, and sometimes you don't. So that's not always a perfect solution. I know we had a patient at one of our West Jacks clinics. It was a husband and wife with a small child, and they had their appointment, and it was time to leave. We called the Uber, and they were like, "Sorry, we have no drivers." So this was at 6 o'clock, and somebody had to drive them home from the clinic.
Wow. Yeah.
One of the staff
So
members.
it's not
so
perfect.
It's not perfect,
Right.
Hopefully, it will be when you need it, but at least to me, I haven't tried that service yet, but I think that's a wonderful
It is a wonderful
thought.
thing, because a lot of the people who need it, like if my parents were still alive, they would have no idea
How to use the
a
app.
phone to do it.
Well, my parents don't have smartphones. Now, Jitterbug makes a smartphone, but they didn't want that. They wanted the flip phone, because it's more like what they're used to, and it has the bigger buttons.
Right.
They could probably use the smartphone, but they don't want to because they have iPads. And I'm like, you have iPads. It's the
No.
same thing.
Right.
Basically, it's just a little bit smaller.
Have y'all heard of GoGo Grandparent or GoGo something?
A GoPad? Or no?
No, I think it's an app called Go
Oh.
Grandparent, or maybe it's a phone. I'm not sure, but it is specifically designed to call the service. And I think it may be just a phone. Anyway, something to look up and
Yeah.
look into. But a lot of these organizations like AARP and some insurance companies have forms that you can fill out ahead of time, like make a contract with yourself to say, okay, if I'm not doing X, Y, and Z,
Right.
then I'm gonna be the one to decide that it's time to not
Right.
drive. So yeah. And if you have anything you'd like to add, just grab the mic or drop it.
I just want to take it all in.
Yeah.
See what you
Yes.
all this.
Yep. Just talking.
My mother has an iPhone, and we can't get her off. But,
Yeah.
and she thinks it's the best phone in the world. And
Yeah.
and then she doesn't know she doesn't practice like taking care of her personal information on it sometimes, and she was hacked. I don't know, but that hasn't stopped her. So I like the idea of a flip phone. I think it's less distracting, maybe, and maybe easier.
Yeah.
I just set it up last weekend for my dad. My mom already had one.
Yeah.
I think it's going to work well.
Well, good.
But we don't, like I said, I don't have that level of service yet because they don't really need all the other services that go with that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's nice to know that when they do,
Yeah.
that lift part is available.
Yeah. You've got options.
Yeah.
Yep.
And actually, Suzanne, you said something that I really feel like is a good follow-up and kind of a point I'd like to discuss is figuring out for ourselves when that point of not being able to drive. Because it's a little bit of like, oh, then you're old. Like you're really old kind of thing. But also about keeping people in your lives safe. Because I will say as a follow-up to my mother-in-law story, didn't stop her from driving.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, and maybe if you have something in front of you where you've signed it, and you can look at that and say, that was smart me telling future me what I need to be doing. But, it's hard to say how you'll feel in the minute because it's your independence gone in some ways. That's what it feels like.
And part of it is because I've seen the AARP, but whether cognitively, where we can have a cognitive discussion now.
Here, I'm going to stop real quick. Okay, we're back.
Well, going back to the AARP form, that cognitively we could be sitting down and making that judgment now, and it all makes good sense to us. But what I've seen from my experience, what cognitively, that what makes good sense to us now, that with some diminishing of capability or some emotional resistance, that you're like, oh, I didn't really mean that. That wasn't really a standard that I had to be able to turn my neck to the left and the right kind of thing.
Right.
So that to me, that's part of the concern about other safety nets, whether it's family or friends that
Someone
can
to keep
say
you accountable.
for you.
Yep. And I think that's why most people depend on their kids for that kind of feedback. But I think maybe at go time when it's actually happening, it's easy. Yes,
just like a teenager.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and also that's assuming that you have children that are living in town and maybe riding with you on a regular or semi-regular basis too.
Yeah. Right.
Just one thing I wanted to say. It sounds like what we need to do is keep these conversations going
Yes.
with our family and just make it sort of a norm to talk about this stuff instead of
Yes.
all of a sudden, like with one of my other parents, we're terrified that something may happen, but we can't approach them. So, but I think just talking about this stuff.
Yes, and that makes it feel normal, more normal. When it's not a taboo topic,
Or they're not being singled out necessarily.
Yes, right. And I
guess.
just in this whole thinking about grand planning, I always think back to, the time before you get pregnant or, you're going to start a family. There's all this conversation. There are TV shows about it. You can see births, you read books on it, and it's very talked about and very open. But this has been a closed book, and it's a shame because I think even just being able to talk about it in a normal tone without being convicting or anything is so helpful to make people feel like they have choices and
Yeah,
that
I think that's
it's not
the key.
weird.
They
Yeah.
let them feel like they have a choice in the matter. Maybe.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's move on to number 10. So we're out of the hard steps, and now we're into the softer stuff. And so number 10 is about embracing our age, appearance, and role. And this, I don't know if it's my friends or where I grew up or whatever, my social circles, but I have seen a reluctance for a lot of women, the generation above, to embrace the idea of being a grandparent, and there's more of a focus on being youthful and which is great. I think we should all want to feel and act young, but not as much of a, like, I remember my grandmothers being so involved in our upbringing, and they looked a little older, and that was fine, and everyone had a great time, and it was not a thing. But I feel like now there's more of a focus on how I look, how active I am, what I'm doing, not as much into the more traditional roles of being on the scene and embracing that role. So that's kind of where that comes from. But I wonder if y'all have seen any of those kind of nuances cropping up with your parents or friends or and I mean, you just see a lot more plastic surgery. It's just the whole thing. I just don't understand it. And I'm all for getting jacked up. If that makes you feel good, go for it. But I watched someone on Jeopardy last night. I don't know if y'all watch Jeopardy, but yeah. There was a woman. She was so pretty, but her eyebrows were stuck in up position the entire time. They were just so up there. It just made me think, like, golly, it's fine to have wrinkles are fine. It's not a big deal. But anyway, does anyone have any other thoughts on that topic? It's
definitely changing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Go ahead.
No,
go
yeah,
ahead.
speak.
I was just thinking about gray hair, and some of us like to cover gray hair.
No, gray hair is fine. Gray hair is fine. Color hair is fine.
I'd love to stop coloring my hair. Several of my friends have embraced it, and they look so much better. Thank you.
Yeah.
I would like to do that.
No,
Really
I think
like
it
to.
looks
See
pretty.
any gray in there?
Yeah.
Yes, covered it well.
That's because we had a very good hairdo.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hairdressers. Yeah.
There
Aw.
you go.
That's all.
That's the compromise right there.
Yeah. Find a good hairdresser.
Okay.
Yeah.
I went to Great Clips because I was so desperate to have my hair done yesterday. They happened to be open. It was such a bargain. Of course, they just cut it. But I went into work today, and mind you, I work with a bunch of 30-year-olds. And my manager she looks like she could be 30, but she's, more like maybe late 50s. She's really pretty, but she still has the long hair, that probably had in college. Well, anyway, I went in there today, and people were like, "Wow, what'd you do? You look so young."
Oh.
And I thought $30, and I did the trick.
Yeah.
So I don't care. I really don't care that much, whatever.
Is it a new haircut?
It's just,
Style?
well, where I work, women have long hair, which looks nice, but on me it doesn't necessarily. So I just chopped it.
So how long was it before you cut it?
I don't know. It had grown quite a bit. It was down here.
It is a great cut.
Yeah, it looks real pretty.
Oh, I feel like I'm 13.
Yesterday?
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's like, blonde, and then it's not blonde, and, I've got that going on too.
It is.
Yes.
So we can find ways, maybe.
Yes.
And it's very uplifting to get the haircut.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm hung up on it a little bit because my mom, she passed away when I was 20, but she turned your color by the time she was 30. So she just always had that silver white hair, and she would always put a rinse in it so it wouldn't be, get too technicolor. But anyway, I always thought, oh, that looks so pretty. I can't wait. It's going to happen to me one day, because my vision was to always have like a silver hair and then get some real dark eyebrows and be and red lipstick and be real extreme looking. I thought that would be fun. So I stopped coloring my hair, and actually I stopped cutting it too. And I'm only growing my hair long because it's thinning now. And I thought, well, if I kind of like the men with a comb over, like I'm going to have hair, might as well have some down here. But anyway, I stopped coloring my hair, and it hasn't come yet. I have a little bit, but nothing major. So anyway, I'm a big fan of going natural and just taking in all whatever nature throws at you. But anyway,
I didn't never color it in the first place.
yeah,
Then it would have been a lot easier.
yeah,
I really,
yeah.
because and I have Anne, of course. We all talk about Anne. I see pictures of her when she had her dark hair. This friend of ours who's about the same age, and it's shocking now because she's let her hair go gray, and she looks fabulous.
Yeah.
And I think, but when during the pandemic, I let mine go because I had to. I couldn't go. And even when I went back to see my hairdresser, he was like, "Oh no, you're not ready." And I'm like, "No, I'm not." The color was just not. It's just I'm like, but I want to. I don't want to do this anymore because it's I go every 4 weeks, and it's 2 and a half hours out of my life.
Investment.
It is, and it's expensive, and it's getting even more expensive. Have you seen how much they've gone up to?
Yeah, and I got 3 weeks.
Oof.
Yeah, I'm like, I can't really afford this anymore.
It's a bargain.
Well, but it's the color that, yeah.
Yeah, but not the color. I would.
Yeah.
So anyway, I would really like to go, but
Also, another thing I think we can do to help ourselves is on like who we follow. That's maybe on social media. There's on Instagram a woman it's her page is Icon Accidental.
Is it Iris Apfel? Is that?
No, it's
No.
not Iris Apfel. Iris, she is her haircut is very much like yours with a short bob, and she kind of fell into. She really liked fashion, and her boyfriend started taking pictures of her, with clothes and stuff. So she became, for a while, she lived in New York, kind of looking trendy and edgy, but, you're clearly gray haired. And then she's made the shift, and they moved into the countryside, and she's gone away from wearing the higher fashion to more comfortable like jeans and a corduroy kind of stuff. So she's using her platform to talk about that shift. And she has a book coming out in March.
Oh, great.
Talking about that. But I think if we, influences that we seek, and not like, but, people we follow, people we pay attention to, if we look at them and say, oh, you have gray hair, you have wrinkles, and it's okay, kind of thing, versus looking at the person who's in their 50s and wearing a bikini in Hawaii.
Right. Oh no. Yeah, that's not happening. Yeah, and I think just closing this bit out. Have y'all read? What is it? David Brooks. Oh gosh, I can't remember his name. His Strength to Strength. Anyway, he talks a lot about the second half and this change between being an achiever and going all these things, and then becoming an imparter or someone who's mentoring and finding a way to be a teacher versus an achiever. And you can do that in your job, the same job you have, but maybe it just looks a little different. And I think that's a little bit what I'm thinking with accepting your role, is that as we get older, it's okay and it's normal and it's right to bring other people along, look at younger folks and see what strengths of yours you can share with somebody else. And I wish I saw more of that with the generation, at least the generation that I have gotten to know. But anyway, so moving on, some other low-hanging fruit. Number 11 is to focus on your mind, body, and soul. And I think, the study after study after study proves it to be true that if you can focus on cognition, brushing up on your cognition skills, playing games, reading books, doing the things, you're going to have better outcomes, socializing, that kind of thing. With your body, if you're keeping up your fitness and going on walks or, keeping a baseline, that's also good for your senior experience. And then with your soul, whatever it is, wherever you find your spiritual charge, keep doing that. And I think I've seen lots of studies about how much being a part of a faith community can be so good for moving into that stage of life. So, let's see, the couple I cared for had none of those things going for them, and it showed. I mean, I was doing some caregiving management for a couple in South Florida, and they had no faith background. And that was fine. I mean, if you're not into all that, that's fine too. But there was no community to fall back on to support them with their physical abilities. That was out the window. They'd stopped walking, stopped getting out of the house, and that was just another reason things started to crumble. And then with their minds, I mean, one of them had alcohol-induced dementia, which changed everything. And so I think focusing on those three things, if we can just keep it up a little bit, is going to really change the game for us as we move our way up. Does anyone have any thoughts on your mind, body, and soul?
I also think one thing is to embrace having friendships and relationships with people younger than you.
Yes.
Because
absolutely.
then it's another way of building that community. It keeps your mind engaged because then you know more about the trends, the issues, the concerns. And the thing I think we really have to watch against is not being the person, well, back in my day, we didn't have to, I just I told my son, you get the lawnmower and you go out there and you knock on all the neighbors' doors and you earn yourself some money that way for spending money. And we're now in a society where, some of those jobs like mowing the yards, it's a profession, it's, delivering the newspaper. Mm-hmm. It's not a kid on the bicycle anymore. It's someone in the car that has a side gig or something like that.
Right.
So being aware how society has changed from our time to their time. Mm-hmm. And being, a great question I've learned and I haven't always embraced is, do you want someone to listen, or do you want, someone to help solve a problem? But mm-hmm. being that listening ear without thinking you have to fix everything and you have all the answers. Right. But also, it also builds you that community, because particularly as people age, we've all been to that funeral where we say, oh, everybody they knew died. So they're like the last of their generation. Mm-hmm. So of having people that you're engaged with keeps you younger than you, that if you're fortunate to live that long, then you're not by yourself. You have a community of some sort.
Oh, I think that is a great point. And my father-in-law, who worked at Bowles for many years, he attributes that experience to keeping him so young is because he's 95, but you ask him and he says, I feel 55. I mean, any day. And
you need to find out.
Yeah, but I think it's because he was around so many youthful people for so long, and that just helped change his perspective of what it really means to look or feel old. I mean, so.
One thing I just want to say, I actually live in the same household with my 88-year-old mother.
And she's great.
And she's great. And so what I'm seeing is I think both age groups can really benefit from being around each other because the more elderly have wisdom. And they did think life was simpler, a little slower, not so crazy. And then the young ones, like you were saying, can keep the elderly a little bit more up to date, like, on trends and such. So just kind of a win-win.
Yeah. Do y'all how do y'all work it, you and your mom?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Does she do that? Does she share her wisdom?
She does. Well, my son's also there. Mm-hmm. So, and he's 35.
Okay,
Yeah,
you've got
we just moved on in.
an intergenerational household for
It
sure.
was so nice and easy, and she still cooks. She insists on making dinners, and we're like, okay,
Yeah.
that's good. We'll do the dishes for you.
Yeah.
But it's really good, and I think I really particularly see with my son because they really do. They have a connection, and my son says, "Oh, I like to challenge her." And then she'll rise to it. But she always will say, this is my perspective, and I've been alive a lot longer than you have, and this is how I see things. So they do. They definitely discuss, and I can see the value in it. I'm in the middle. I'm the referee.
Yeah. Yeah. You're in the middle.
Right, okay.
Well, I'm going
It
to
is.
pick on you because I know that church is part of your experience. How has that factored into the way, how has that community helped in your experience with your mom and with
With my mother, I mean, she's there every Sunday. And she tells me now stories about how when she was a little girl, she made or built or tried to build, what is it called, at the front of the church, like the table? Anyway, so in some friend of hers' garage.
Oh,
So I think for a long time in her life, I think she's always kind of had this affinity to, spirituality or church. And I think one of her grandmothers was, instrumental in taking her to church more often. I don't think her parents really did. So, so yeah, oh my gosh, it's a huge support for her. Plus, she gives back. I mean, she's done a lot, as you you have too. But like, I guess as a shepherd, and she, would go and visit some of the people that are in either assisted living or shut in, and and then people would talk and about how to support. So I think giving to others has been really good for her.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's part of socializing too.
Yes.
Like you were saying, that's a big component.
Right.
So-
And I think just that community, whatever it is your community is, and I guess we might get into this later, but having a community where you're missed if you're not seen, you can be supportive if you need it. I think it's a great place to have eyeballs on the person you love.
Yes,
Yeah, so-
exactly.
Anyway, does anyone else have any thoughts on mind, body, and spirit? All right. Well, let's get to the last one for today. And this is my favorite. And actually, if I had to pick one about if you just do nothing else, if you don't get rid of your Hummel figurines and you keep the brown furniture and you don't have any legal documents drawn up, the one thing that we can all do, and it's free and it can become increasingly easy, is if we communicate with our people a lot and often and with freedom. Because I think that's where it all begins. When if you're not communicating, you're keeping it inside, you're embarrassed to talk about it, it's uncomfortable, that's none of your business, that kind of mindset it just can throw the entire thing off the tracks if your people don't know what you're planning or how you see things. And and maybe your plan is, oh hey, I haven't saved anything and I'm going to live with you one day. And that's fine if everyone's on the same page and everyone knows about it. But what you want to try to mitigate is the surprise, right? Or just the shock or I hadn't saved or planned financially to have you and, all these things. So I think anything can work as long as you're talking about it with your people. So, I get back to my situation with the couple in South Florida. They didn't tell me anything. They signed me up to be their power of attorney and successor trustee if something were to happen to them or they were unable to manage their affairs. And I mean, I'm glad they did that at least, so that there was someone in place. That was smart, but it was a complete and total surprise. And I had teenagers. No. I learned about this after finding out who their housekeeper was very concerned. She called me because she had my number, and I then called the attorney. Like, I was able to get the attorney's number, and he said, "Oh, you're Susanna Barton? Well, you can actually help." Because I was just wanted to say, this couple needs help. They're going through a lot of things. So anyway, it was all of a sudden, the plate in front of me, and it was hard, and it took a long time to make it through everything. And it was, it's the impetus for this entire project is just the crises day after day after day after day. And I wasn't used to living that way. And so it came as a big surprise. But if I had known ahead of time that this was going to be part of the drill, I think it would have been a little easier to manage, or at least prepare for myself mentally.
If this couple had asked you to take on that role, would you have willingly done it?
So at the time, yes, having not known what was involved. Yes. But I would tell anyone now, being someone's power of attorney, it's an essential role. Someone's got to do it, but it is very, very hard work, and it'll make you crazy. And it's not at all as easy as it sounds. So I would encourage anyone to consider saying no unless they're sure that they want to get involved in that. So.
Because you were not related to them at all.
No. They were the parents of a childhood friend who passed away early. And anyway, it was, yes, out of the blue, but out of the blue also comes some blessings, and I think encouraging conversations about it has been a blessing, and hopefully helping other people. So, any thoughts on either bad situations where something wasn't communicated, or about solutions to creating good communication in a family?
Well, here's my challenge, because when I've tried to bring up things with my children, they say, "Oh, that's really morbid."
Yes.
Or,
Yes.
they give me a really perplexed look. And since they're not really home, it's not like I can have these conversations around the dinner table. I kind of let that ship sail. So, I should have been doing that maybe junior high, middle school, high school time. But because, and the reason I say that is because I was probably junior high-ish when the whole notion of hospice and in life directives started coming out. And because we had a lot of discussion at the dinner table, I was really clear, and it made my brother clear too about what my father would have wanted. So that helped. And it helped prevent us having arguments over about whether there should be more intervention or not. But right now, I would say if anyone's the brick wall, it's the 20-year-olds.
Right.
20-something-year-olds and the
Yeah.
130-year-old.
Well, they don't like to talk on the phone either. Right. So forget about it. But, I think it's worth a try, or at least just to make it not feel so morbid, because I think that's another gift we can give the generation behind us, is that and this sounds awful, but we are all going to die, and it's just normal, and it's not scary. It's just something we have to plan for, just like having babies and getting married and doing all that stuff. It's normal. Yeah, but they don't listen. But maybe they will one day. No.
So I have just the opposite.
Here, I'm going to give this to you.
So both my parents are still alive. My dad is 100,
Oh my goodness.
and my mother's 94,
Wow.
and they don't want to talk about it at all.
Oh my goodness.
So whenever I try to bring it up, they don't want to talk about it.
Well, that's that generation too.
So, I did finally about 4 or 5 years ago get my mother to a lawyer that she knew his mother,
Perfect.
and so that was okay. And then but of course, it's like trying to understand, and my dad refuses to go. He says, I'll take care of it, but he never does.
And how has that impacted you as the caregiver
Well,
or the,
I'm
the person?
they don't live here.
Oh.
Oh boy.
They do live in Florida, at least. They live in Pinellas County. So it's, pretty much of how it affects me is I'm a wreck most of the time. Yeah.
What's their living situation? I mean, are they in their own
They're
home?
independent. They still drive.
Oh my goodness.
They won't get any help in the house.
Of course not.
They won't get what
Any help.
in the house? Oh.
My dad might, but but my mother refuses, and so my dad says, I don't want to get in a fight with your mom. And they've been married 73 years.
Gosh. Wow.
So it's, and they're used to being in charge, very much in charge.
Are you the only the only child?
No, I have a brother in New York and a brother that lives about 5 miles from them, but he has some substantial health issues. And so he goes by, but, he also doesn't see a lot of stuff, he just focuses on them, which is good, but he doesn't see that, the dishes haven't been done in 3 days, or, my mother's hair looks like, she's
Like a chicken.
like crazy. Yeah. And,
Great clue.
and and my mom is starting to have some signs of memory loss.
At 94.
And that's very bad, very hard on my dad, because she did everything. And he had to learn how to, he does know how to load the dishwasher. And he does, know how to, today when I spoke to him, he said, well, I'm getting ready to make your mom and I some eggs. I'm going to make some eggs, But, then we make the eggs and they eat a little, and then it's like 3 days later they're like, so I send them meals and already prepared and everything. But I haven't even had a chance to think of, other than doing my own will. I did do that. I've got all that, but talking about my own funeral, no, I haven't had it. I can't even think about that.
Right. Your
Which
brain
I
is-
know I'm supposed to, but
I know.
but so I'm trying to, what interested me about the program was to, see if there were some hints that I could take away, some nuts, that, because we all know both, the 3 siblings, and thank goodness I have friends there that I grew up with, and they're like, my eyes, and but it's probably one of the most challenging things that I can remember in my life.
How do they want you to come down and be with them? How do they feel about that?
Well, I work full time, so that's not going to
I do
happen.
too, because
But-
my parents are here, but I know that their druthers would be that I do everything for them. I mean, I just know it. So that's why I was wondering, what can they have? But what would they like to have? If you were there, do you think they would really
They like it,
you?
although my dad is like, I only call like 4 times a week instead of every day, because my dad is like,
Why are you calling?
are you okay? Yeah,
Probably ask you if you're okay.
right. Are you okay? You know, I'm the same as I was yesterday. You know, that's what he tells me. You know, I'm like, no, I'm just calling to say hi. And I do go every 4 weeks. I go for a long weekend to kind of help put things back in order.
And they let you do things when
Oh,
you're
he
there?
gets so mad at me. He goes, you know, I'm just going to come to your house and move everything so that when I leave, you're not going to be able to find anything.
He sounds like
He's sassy.
Oh, he's, you know, he can get very hard, you know. But, and my mom is like, you know, she's a sweetheart. She, you know, but she can't. I told my dad, I've tried everything with him, reverse psychology, you know, like, Dad, you know, you're 100. You shouldn't be trying to take care of Mom. I'll take care of her, you know. So it's very, you know, this is great for helping me to remember what I need to do, but I'm in the same boat. Well, I'm in worse boat. Well, I'm not sure. Similar.
It's a boat.
It's a similar boat.
Different boats, but
You know, and you know they have. You know, they have done some things, but it's still going to be complete chaos when one of them goes, and then the other one's just not going to have a clue. You know, that's going to be it.
Okay, I have a question, and I'm probably being nosy, but is there anything that you and your brother in New York could do to put in place without really upsetting them, but for your benefit? I don't know what that would be, but you know, when it is their time, when one goes, you know, to support the other surviving spouse, possibly. I mean, I'm just hypothetically. Maybe give
They
your.
don't want it. My dad's already done this to me. I said, "Where'd you learn that?" You know, he's like, "Look at me. I'm dying in this house. Don't get any ideas. I'm gonna die in this house."
Well, and 2 things. So, have you tried the empathy play? Like, this is impacting me in a negative way.
No,
Um,
'cause he really
it doesn't matter. Yeah.
that would not fly with him.
And the so I see 2 things.
Recording this?
Yeah, it's okay. No, there's no names involved. But I see 2 things. One, you're beginning the communication piece and the planning piece now in the thick of it, and so yeah, overwhelming. And then thinking about yourself is like, oh no, gotta
Well,
start first things first. But
what I have told my kids is that I'm going to write myself a letter,
yes,
and I'm going to give the letter to them. And the letter's going to be, don't be stubborn. They're not trying to, you know, you can trust them.
mm-hmm.
You know, and you know, recognize that what you do impacts them. You know, so
Yes.
so
Well, and that's kind of why I wrote this book, is to remind myself of all those things. And I think, and you're talking a lot about empathy too, like they aren't seeing how what they're doing impacts you
No.
in a way. And that's,
no, and you know,
too bad.
I feel kind of, I feel like it might be too much to ask them to really think about that, because they're using almost all their energy to, you know, that they have,
right.
to, you know, get along. They do have friends. They mostly my friends, you know, at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's good. They go to the coin club every 2 weeks.
Nice.
You know, they do things,
Right.
but
Are there big red flags? Like, I
yeah,
know
well,
you mentioned
know,
the hair
my mom
and the,
refuses to go to a doctor,
yeah.
period, and my
Right.
father goes to the doctor all the time.
Yeah. So between them, they're meh, healthy.
Well, sometimes my father's doctor will look at my mother and say,
Yeah,
"Yeah,
yeah. But
let me clean out your ear."
yeah, and that sounds tough because you can't really, unless it's you're seeing something immediately in the moment, like that's dangerous, that's unsanitary, that's
Well-
bump bump bump. Then it's hard to say, oh, you should be doing it because I guess even if you're 100, if you're
I
70,
think
it
there
doesn't
are
matter.
all those issues, you know.
Yeah,
But they drive.
that's scary.
Not so much my mother. And of course, my father won't leave my mother at all. I mean, she has the kind of memory loss where one day she's like totally with you, like spot on, and then the next day it's like she'll ask me the same question 20 times.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
so it's very normal, but it's unsettling for my dad especially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's interesting. So I did tell my kids I was going to write the letter so that
Good.
so that and then they have to give it back to me when I start to act up.
Yeah. Yeah. Or I totally agree. I think we should all do something similar. Maybe it's, whether it's, giving the workbook to your kids and say, here, this is what I want, and, I want to remember these things.
Right.
Or just continue
Yeah.
conversations about it. And I think, once you're out of that loop with your parents where that is a tricky, it's come this far, it's hard to then start implementing, oh, let's talk about it, let's have some good communication about this when it hasn't happened
Right.
before they're 100. But I think there's plenty of time to think about you and your family and how you can move forward from this with lessons learned. And I think that's what we're all doing is looking at those experiences and thinking, how can I do it differently? So,
Right. Right. How can I do it different? How can I be? Why do I want to do this? I want to do this for them, for my kids.
Yeah.
You know. So sometimes I talk to my mother about her mother. I was like, Grandma had some false teeth, because that's another thing she won't do. She won't go to the dentist.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So
Well, and I would think that at some point would become an issue for nutrition, but yeah, hard to say. Well, and that is something, having conversations with parents about how their parents were, because I do think,
right.
I remember
To
my
kinda
grandparents.
normalize it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's all, we all do it.
So my big struggle right now with my mother is trying to get her to use some, like Depends or something like that.
Yep.
And I was like, Mom, I don't know any women that don't use some pads or something. If they're 75 or older, they're all using them.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
And you're 90.
Or younger.
You're 94.
Yeah.
And I'm like, come on, Mom, it's okay.
Yeah.
But
You've had 3 kids.
Right.
that's what I told her,
Yeah, these are tough conversations, but I think you're on the right track. Just
Well,
chipping away, chip, chip, chip.
it's chipping away. That's what I'm hoping, So
But it is exhausting.
Yeah.
Worrying about your parents.
are your parents alive?
No, they both passed. My mom in 2022 and my dad in 2020. But it was a horrific journey, more for my mom than my dad. And I'm finally starting to sleep better, almost 2 years later. I don't wake up in the middle of the night with my heart racing and just the brain going in overdrive like it used to, because we finally are almost done settling their affairs. Almost, not quite. 2 years out. Yeah.
They're called the Jerry Scaries.
Yes.
Is that what it's called? Jerry Scaries?
Scaries.
When you wake up?
going to work out.
Yeah.
Now I have a name for it.
Yes. Trademark.
Yes.
Yes.
Sherry Scaries. But anyway, but this is what we're here for, and it's very cathartic to talk about it. And I hope you'll come back the next time and then time after that, and we can continue talking about it, because I think that's the path
Is
to.
your book here today?
It is maybe,
somewhere.
although I just had an event with the Garden Circle ladies this
how
morning,
wonderful.
and they bought all of them. So
That's great.
yeah, so I actually don't think they have any more copies here. So I may have to bring you one next time if that's all right.
I think I can come next. I put them on my calendar
Yeah,
because they were
that-
all like this week, but not next week.
I know that was when I was going to be out of town, but it's
But
we're
it's next
definitely
week
meeting
too,
next
right?
Tuesday. Yes, and then on the 19th is the last one. So
The 19th of March.
yes, yep.
Well, I'm
So-
sorry I couldn't come to the other one.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here
I'll read the
today.
book.
Yes. Thanks for being with us today. It was a great conversation, and look forward to joining us again the next time. You can find this recording and all others at mygrandplans.com. There's some links there, and also through our YouTube page and on social media channels, which on Facebook is My Grand Plans and at My Grand Plans, and then on Instagram it's Grand Plans 2022. Thanks for being with us.